Russia has stated that it has no plans for an additional mobilization of troops, as more than 335,000 have signed up to join the Ukraine war this year so far. Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said on Tuesday, October 3, that more than 50,000 Russian citizens signed contracts to fight in the armed forces or voluntary units, News.com has learned. Since the start of the year, more than 335,000 people have entered military service under contract and in volunteer formations. In September alone, more than 50,000 citizens signed contracts, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu told top generals on state television on Tuesday via Reuters, commending the patriotism of those who have signed up. There are no plans for an additional mobilization. The armed forces have the necessary number of military personnel to conduct the special military operation, Shoigu added. The full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022 and the subsequent war have seen massive devastation in eastern and southern Ukraine, as well as the death of numerous Russian troops at the hands of successful counteroffensive operations by Ukraine. According to the first independent statistical analysis reported by AP in July, nearly 50,000 Russian men have died in the war in Ukraine. Russia has only publicly acknowledged 6,000 soldiers have been killed and represses anyone from documenting the actual number of casualties with threats of harassment or potential criminal charges. In September 2022, Putin ordered a partial mobilization of 300,000 reservists, which in turn prompted hundreds of thousands of young men to flee Russia in order to avoid being drafted to the war. Newsweek published a report in September on Russian casualties by the Russian independent investigative outlet iStories, or Important Stories, and the War Monitoring Project Conflict Intelligence Team, CIT. The outlets used publicly released data related to the deaths of draftees from the partial mobilization announced a year ago to draw up the report. It stated that more than half of the dead, who were mobilized, lived at the front for less than 5 months, and every fifth person who died did not live even 2 months at the front lines. Their report further stated that only 4 of the mobilized troops who died in Ukraine lasted more than 11 months before being killed at the front lines. The morale of Russian troops had been in a steady decline, with many attempting to desert their posts from the front lines, and some committing suicide to escape the hellish war after being given faulty ammunition and weapons. Amidst declining morale and soldiers ending up as cannon fodder, the massive turnout of those signing up for the fight is rather surprising. Reuters reported that the huge numbers indicate that Russia has made significant progress both in signing recruits and in absorbing many fighters formerly affiliated with the Wagner mercenary force into voluntary formations. Russian President Vladimir Putin held a meeting on September 29 with the former senior Wagner commander Andrei Trashev precisely regarding the redeployment of Wagner mercenary soldiers in the form of voluntary units. During the televised meeting, the Russian president said that Trashev had promised to be engaged in the formation of volunteer units to be deployed in Ukraine. You yourself fought in such a unit for more than a year. You know how it's done, Putin had told the former Wagner commander.